Welcome back to another episode of the Nebulum Podcast. As a reminder, on this podcast, we explore the idea of fulfillment, and our goal is to inspire people to walk a path of fulfillment and live a fulfilled life. So topics range from philosophical to practical, and oftentimes it's just us talking, and we hope to have guests and things like that in the future. So yeah, I'm Zale.
I'm Grant.
And welcome.
Welcome.
Yes. What's our topic for today?
Yeah. Thank you all for tuning in. Our topic today is discipline. I wanted to choose this topic not for any particular reason. It kind of just popped into my head after I had done some exercise.
It's a very relevant topic for the walking a path of fulfillment.
Yes, exactly. And that's probably why it popped into my head. The thought that came to me was discipline is the key to everything you want. And when I substituted everything you want with fulfillment or fulfillment, it still resonated. So yes, it's a relevant topic. We should talk about what even is discipline. Why do we care about it? Why is it relevant for fulfillment? So yeah, I'm excited. Let's kick it off. What is discipline for you? What does it mean for you?
Interesting. I guess discipline, I would say, is the ability to stick with something consistently throughout variations in mood or situation or weather or energy levels, things like that. The ability to consistently execute or act in a particular way that you've decided to ahead of time and carry that through over and over. Yes, I think that is how I would define it.
That definition resonated with me enough that I'm okay with sticking to that for this podcast.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, I think.
And so
go ahead.
How then does sticking to something consistently over the turbulences, the emotions, the hardships of life, let's say, how does that help us for fulfillment, for achieving?
Yeah, so the thing is, fulfillment is not necessarily easy. Or I would say walking a particular path isn't necessarily easy, especially if that path is something you strive for in terms of a dream. And if you're dreaming big, there's going to be obstacles. You're going to have to do a lot of the paving of the path yourself in a certain way. And especially if you're trying to get good at something, there's going to have to be a lot of repetition, a lot of practice, a lot of overcoming obstacles, a lot of, I'd say, grit. And so that's where discipline comes in, because I think that's the driving force which helps you keep walking the path and keep moving forward. Because if you say, I want to be a bodybuilder, I want to be ripped, and that's my dream, then you're going to have to be consistent enough at exercising in order to achieve that goal. Some days you're not going to feel like it. Some days you're going to be sad, or some days it's going to be raining, or some days it's going to be too hot. There's going to be environmental factors. There's going to be internal factors. There's going to be real situations going on in your life that will be obstacles to that. And so you're going to need discipline to see it through in order to achieve that goal, right? And this is not to say if you have a goal, ignore everything else and focus solely on that goal and, screw everything else. It's just to say, if that goal really is important to you, then you will need more fault tolerance, let's say, in order to keep going, in order to achieve it.
Yeah. To achieve anything great, one needs to be able to not be overcome by these powerful forces such as temptation. Temptation can, instant gratification can take our energy away, move us off the path onto a path we might not want to go on. So while we're walking this path of fulfillment, that takes discipline. Because, for example, if I'm training to be a bodybuilder, for example, and today it's too hot, so I don't want to train. And that's the habit I start ingraining in myself. That can, since that is not discipline, sticking to this repetition of things, that will lead to me probably regretting my decision later. Because I stepped off the path of fulfillment, I let myself be overcome by these forces that I don't necessarily want to be letting dictate my life, like fear or infinite scrolling. If we think about it this way, let's say you're on your deathbed and you spent more time than you would have liked to scrolling on your phone, you're going to regret not having that discipline to put down the phone. So part of this too is helping us walk the path of fulfillment and helping us not regret our decisions. So often I think of when I might have gotten off the path of discipline, and of course we learn things when we fall off the path, but also it doesn't feel good to be tempted and given. And when we look back on it, we're like, damn, I wish I really didn't give in,
Right.
And I just feel like I hear a lot of stories about people getting older and not prioritizing properly. I think that's part of discipline as well, prioritization.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Prioritization and acting out that prioritization, right? Because we can prioritize, but we become a different person when we have a different cocktail of neurochemicals, stewing inside us. When it's different when we wake up versus when we're tired versus when we are sad versus when we have a need for instant gratification, right? And so whenever we're talking about discipline, you're going to encounter topics like instant gratification. You're going to encounter topics like willpower, which we should probably talk about. You're going to encounter topics like habits, consistency, right? So why don't we kind of touch on each of those things?
Sure. You mentioned instant gratification. Often, at least for me, instant gratification comes in the form of phone, food, that sort of thing. And often those kinds of things, for example, if my goal is to be fit and treat my body as if it's my temple, then me eating chocolate or dessert is going to be a deviation from that. And so often when I feel that deviation, it feels like that challenge of temptation that I gave into, now it doesn't resonate because I realize that cocktail of neurochemicals I let dictate my path.
Right.
That's how I feel about it. It's something we have to build a tolerance to.
Right.
And the more that we end up resisting it or moving past it, the more fulfilled I think we can feel because we just overcame that new challenge. And that makes us this much stronger on that path to sticking to that thing. That's my thought on it. How it relates.
Instant gratification, that's a tough one. I mean, we all have needs in a sense that we have learned patterns which fulfill those needs instantly, right? We all have this dopaminergic system, and dopamine is actually the molecule of motivation, right? It's neurochemical that governs motivation. But it gets hijacked by these different things, because when we get a reward that gives us a hit of dopamine, and we are dopamine seeking, and so we will seek that reward over and over. And if that reward is instantly available to us, we may seek that activity or item instead of doing something which has a more delayed release of dopamine. And so I think that's where instant gratification develops, and often the way to get out of the habit of constantly seeking instant gratification is to dial in your dopamine system a bit. And that means maybe doing like a dopamine fast, or rewiring where you get your rewards, right? So let's say you're doing some work. Let's say you're typing. You're building a company and you need to like type documents, or you need to code or something. If you're doing that, and let's say you take a break and you just scroll on Instagram, right? That scrolling on Instagram is a very dopamine-centric activity. You'll get hit after hit after hit after hit. When you come back to working, you're going to feel way less motivated to work, because you just got hit after hit after hit of dopamine from this activity, that your dopamine baseline is now higher. And the dopamine you get from the working that you're doing is not enough to meet that baseline. And so we're going to seek something with a higher amount of dopamine. It's like our dopamine tolerance goes up. And so if instead, this might be an extreme example, but I think a guy named Rian Doris, who is part of this flow research collective body, or was, but he still does a lot of work in flow and life coaching and things like that. He sometimes, when he takes a break, just stares at a wall. He stares at a wall as his break, so that when he comes back to the work he's doing, that work is way more stimulating than staring at a wall, right? So he's essentially bringing down his dopamine tolerance, so that so that he's more dopamine sensitive. And so we want to be more dopamine sensitive, because then activities which have smaller hits of dopamine as we get little tasks done, and as we associate a larger hit of dopamine with finishing something which is actually fulfilling, which we have declared fulfilling to us, when we're dopamine sensitive, that can have a much more of an effect than if we are bombarded by dopamine all the time.
That's a really good example, actually, of discipline.
Yeah.
That guy just staring at a wall.
Yeah.
And that's not easy. I imagine we all have the chance to stare at a wall. Right. And most of us don't do that.
It's boring as hell.
Yeah, so that discipline, I really commend that guy. Definitely will check him out.
Yeah.
I think that brings us actually to our next thing that you mentioned, which was willpower.
Right.
And so I don't think that guy can achieve staring at a wall day after day with just willpower.
Right.
Even though willpower is an aspect of discipline, I don't want to put it too highly on the list of things.
Mm-hmm.
Part of discipline is being able to tailor your environment and your habits to make that wall staring automatic.
Yeah.
Because I imagine that it does not take him any willpower to stare at that wall anymore.
Right.
And one other thing I think we should talk about too is the fact that probably thinking about staring at a wall, anticipating it, is worse than actually doing it. A lot of times, anticipation of the pain of doing something with a lower dopamine or even painful can be more painful than the actual thing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get into that, but we can touch on willpower first. So what I wanted to say about willpower is that this guy, I imagine when he first started staring at the wall, it took willpower.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to use that willpower to overcome his initial inertia
Mm-hmm.
of not wanting to stare at the wall.
Mm-hmm.
However, he knew that doing this wall staring would help him achieve his goals by being more focused.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, willpower, the value of it is in getting us over those humps, those initial humps
Mm-hmm.
to get started.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might need it here or there.
Yeah.
For me, it's not something to rely on
Yeah.
because it's kind of a forcing method.
Sure.
So it's not, I don't know a better way to say this, it's not quote unquote Taoist. You're not
Sure.
going with the flow.
Okay.
You do need to resist a bit to get that ball rolling. But I think once it's rolling, we don't need to rely on willpower so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's my initial thoughts on it.
Yeah.
But would love to hear yours.
I agree. Momentum, that's the word that came to my mind as you talked about getting the ball rolling. Momentum is like one of the wonders of this world. I think if you can build momentum with anything you're doing, that's the force. Well, not force, it's momentum. Well, that's the the thing that will be one of the highest leverage things that you can implement, because that will make it easier. That will make you need less willpower, right? But back to willpower. Willpower is a fantastic force, I believe, because that will get you over hurdles. That will get you to start. Often starting, you already have momentum. You can keep going. We like inertia. We like things to just remain the same for some reason. So fucking physics. I don't know. And willpower is that thing that gets us to start. And then, however, it is said that willpower is a depletable resource. You use it throughout the day, it's gonna wear out eventually. And so instead of relying on willpower, we're gonna need to implement habit. And what was the other thing I was gonna say? And dial in our motivation. So before I touch on those things, I want to dial a bit more into willpower. Because even though I don't think we should rely solely on willpower, we will have to rely on it a little, and it's going to help to understand how to increase it. And as a matter of fact, this might be hard to do, but you increase willpower by executing willpower. So there's a part of our brain, I think this is relatively new research. There's a part of our brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. It is the AMCC for short. And it's essentially like a muscle. It literally grows the more we do something that we don't want to do. So each time you do something you don't want to do, that's like doing another rep with your AMCC. And it literally grows, and people with bigger AMCCs can more easily do things they don't want to do. They essentially have grown their willpower. And, you know, man like David Goggins, right? That guy is like a walking AMCC. He can do anything he doesn't want to do, he can just fucking do it. So what has helped me sometimes, keeping that model in mind, when I don't want to do something, it helps me to think of it as a rep of the AMCC, and that makes it easier for me sometimes to actually do it, because then I know, okay, my AMCC is getting stronger. It's going to be easier for me to do it again, and I really want this thing. And the really want this thing part is the motivation, which is going to help with taking that first rep. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the motivation kind of helps you. It's the thing that gives meaning to the activity.
Right. Exactly.
And that meaning is what drives you. And we call that motivation.
Yeah.
Cool. The AMCC rep thing I've never heard.
Yeah.
And that can make that thing that you don't want to do be more of a rep than a chore.
Right.
So that gives it meaning, that growth. One thing I thought was really interesting, I think back to school and I think back to 9-to-5 jobs, things people don't want to do. And I just wonder if the most successful people in school and jobs are the ones with the highest AMCC, biggest AMCCs, because I mean, I didn't really want to do that shit, bro.
Yeah.
But I did it.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point, the AMCC.
Yeah.
I wanted to actually come back to willpower just for a second, because actually I wanted to come back to the wall staring. And I imagine that guy does not have his phone out when he is working or anywhere near him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no.
So I wanted to talk about how we can use the willpower we have to help us shape our environment.
Right.
So we don't have to rely on willpower in the future.
Right.
I think willpower is great, but again, I don't prefer to rely on it as my main driver. However, this environment creation, I think, is a huge factor in discipline. Because if we're going to talk about discipline, we need to talk about all the different things we can do to help our fulfillment come to fruition. So all the different tweaks we can make to our environment, I think that's a huge one I want to talk about. And a huge contributing factor to the environment is the society that we live in. And all of these different instant gratification tools, this food that we have is primed to prey on your dopaminergic system. So I wanted to just mention that discipline, it seems like it is extra hard these days with all these things coming for our systems, our attention. I think one way to frame it is modern society sucks. And another way to frame it is we're just lifting on hard mode. We're going on hard mode with discipline these days. How do you think about that?
I think I like what you said about shaping the environment, because that's going to be higher leverage than simply brute forcing through every single thing, right? We do have to be strategic. We can't just like go in the gym and, put on 5 plates onto our AMCC and just lift. You know what I mean? It's better to shape your environment. So if my willpower isn't strong enough to ignore my phone when it's right there and I'm just feeling tired, use the willpower earlier in the process before you're actually encountered with that. Use the willpower upstream, right? So that you don't need to enact as much willpower downstream. And that can be like a lighter lift of your MCC, to use your willpower to do that. So maybe you use your willpower to leave your phone in the parking lot, in your car, when you going into the office. So you just don't have your phone to distract you while you work, for example.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would like to say that, for me, is discipline. Being able to leave your phone in the parking lot, that is discipline.
It is discipline. However, it might be easier to do than to ignore your phone when it's already there, when it's already beside you. Yeah. So I'm just saying early in the process.
Exactly. And that's where it comes back to what you were talking about, the strategy. Your strategy matters.
Yeah.
So your strategy needs to have all these things in mind to help you stay disciplined. So the point we're trying to make here is it's not a willpower game, it's a long game. We're playing a long game here. We need a strategy where we can use our willpower but not rely on it.
Right.
I think often when people have New Year's resolutions, for example, they struggle to stay disciplined because they're just relying on willpower.
Mm-hmm.
And it never lasts more than a year.
Mm-hmm.
So just want to say I totally agree with your point.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is willpower and the AMCC. And now I want to touch a bit on motivation, actually, because motivation is going to help guide you to, help guide you to take that first rep of your AMCC or whatever. And so dialing in your motivation, the art of motivation becomes a key pillar of discipline, in my opinion. Because it's the why, right? If you fear the pain of doing the thing more than you want the result, then the fear of the pain is going to win.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
I think often the misconception of discipline is one of pain, suffering, struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I discipline my child is a common way of using it.
Mm-hmm.
However, discipline doesn't need to be like this.
Right.
Discipline can be like what you're talking about, where it's motivation, where it's actually that the story we create, the framing around it is that the discipline, the thing that I want is greatly outweighing whatever small little urge is arising in this moment, where it's not even hard because I did the mental story making around the motivation to where I want that thing. I want discipline so much more. However, that's also a process.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to constantly be remembering that.
Absolutely.
And like thinking about that.
Absolutely.
Because again, the environment we're in, all these devices preying on our energy, trying to take away. I don't know what that Drake song is, but yeah, all the demons trying to get his energy,
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's true. And so this comes back again to architecting your environment, because you said we have to keep remembering the why. However, it's even better if your environment keeps reminding you of the why, right? So let's say you just use your AMCC to put up notes on your wall around different places in your house to remind you of reasons why you want this thing. Or you set alarms on your phone throughout the day to remind you. Or an even better one, you gain an accountability partner, like a friend who will you'll check in with each other. How's this thing going? Are you doing this thing? What's stopping it? Having someone to be accountable to is a huge thing. Part of a group or something like that. That can be a huge way to keep reminding yourself of what you want to do. And it's important to really think about why you want the thing, what you're running towards, what you're running away from. Like, what's your life going to be like if you don't get this thing? How are you going to feel if you don't get this thing? Do you want to continue the way you are? Some people will be like, fuck no, I want to, I don't want to keep living this life. And so it's important to feel that emotion, feel whatever is driving you, feel it often so that it keeps driving you, right? And yeah, it's all about repetition at the end of the day. With motivation, I think the more we can repeat the why to ourselves, the more motivated we'll feel. And the more you can have your environment repeat the why to you, the more motivated you'll feel. The more you can have your friends repeat the why to you, your phone, your alarm, things like that. So these different techniques, such as maybe joining a group around the thing you want to do, or having an accountability partner, or using one of these apps like Habit Share or Habitica or things like that. Habitica is one that will like gamify the habits that you want. Things like that can help add some extra little dopamine each time you do something, right? So that's one thing that can help. I paste things up on my wall and write things on my whiteboard so that I see them every day. And
Do you not does your brain not ignore those after a while?
after a while, it does. However, I still think it's better than not having it, because from time to time, I look. From time to time, I look at it. I'm like, yeah, and I try to reconnect to it. Yeah. So it's all about the more angles it can attack you from, the easier it's going to penetrate. Just more repetition.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'll have to start putting things up on my wall.
I recommend it.
Great. I feel like we did a good coverage of discipline, repetition, sticking to things, repeating the same thing despite all of the distractions, creating your environment, how to use willpower, building up your why. The thing I'm taking away from this is to build up my why very emotionally.
Yeah.
And to put these reminders on the wall, get an accountability buddy, things like that. So in terms of discipline and motivation, I feel like the concept I feel complete on the talking we've done on the concept.
Sure.
I'm not sure what else we would add right now, but I'm curious, what would you add?
Well, we've talked about this before, but it's a good reminder, just techniques around forming habits, kind of like the same ethos of the Atomic Habits book. I think essentially make it easier to do the thing, make it harder to not do the thing. Right?
But again, that alone isn't going to make it happen. That story, that why that creates that motivation needs to also be there.
Yes, it does need to also be there. I think all of these things, form the habits, shape the environment to facilitate the habits, work on the motivation, and from time to time take some reps with your AMCC. Build up the willpower, because that's important too, but don't rely on it, as you said. Rely more on play it on easy mode. The more you can shape your environment and your systems to make you do what you're going to do, what you need to do, that easier it will be for you.
How often do you reflect on your motivations?
Not often enough. So I used to, honestly, almost every day for a while when I really, really needed to dial it in. At the time I had a life coach, and so at least every week we would go over them. And I would reflect on them very, very often. And so it probably will ebb and flow and cycle, but I do think it's a fantastic idea, at least for a time, to be re-upping on that every single day, at least for a time, until you have some momentum. Momentum is your friend. And sometimes in order to build momentum, you just have to act. You just have to move, because motivation is fantastic, but we also can't rely on motivation. Just like we can't rely on willpower, we can't rely on motivation either, because sometimes it's the action that breeds the motivation. And so when we don't feel that motivation, we don't feel like doing it, sometimes it's the doing it that rebuilds the motivation. And so it's another part of it.
Yeah, sure. I think motivation, right, we can't rely on it, because without the action, none of it means anything.
Right.
And so we can trick ourselves by getting really motivated and then doing it one time. So yeah, relying on motivation can also not be a source of That'd be our full source. And now that gets to the point of discipline. So you can't rely on willpower. You can't rely on motivation. You can't rely on environment solely. You still need to take action. So,
So what do we rely on?
so is discipline the only thing left? I'm just thinking, is discipline that like indescribable thing that is the action? Of course, you need discipline to form all of these different things and use them to your advantage.
Yeah.
But discipline is still there. It's that essence that like ties it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of is.
That can't really be described, but it's that repeated action and leveraging this motivation and all that stuff that we talked about. But it's the repeated action taking.
Yeah.
Is core to discipline.
Yeah.
Without action, there is no discipline.
Right.
You need action, repeated action.
Right. Right. Yeah, the discipline is the repeated action taking. But the discipline, I think, encompasses all of this. The discipline is the act of architecting your environment so that the action is easier.
Yeah.
The discipline also encompasses the act of dialing in your motivation and repeating it to yourself every day. The discipline encompasses the act of reducing your dopamine baseline. The discipline encompasses the act of forming the habits that make it easier to enact the discipline. So it's all of this, and then it's still just doing it.
Yes.
You do it sad, you do it mad, you do it happy, you do it crying. Whatever is happening,
Yes.
you're doing it. So it just becomes part of the fabric of your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we need to go over this, if we already went over this, but now that we've kind of demonstrated what we believe the concept of discipline is, let's tie it back to fulfillment. So, personally, I feel the practice of discipline itself is a fulfilling practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like the dopamine system. When you feel pain, then you get a spike of pleasure after.
Mm-hmm.
You get in that cold plunge, it hurts, you get out, you get that spike, that release of dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel that discipline is similar.
Mm.
You get over those small humps and you get the pleasure at the end of it. And that pleasure is fulfillment,
Mm-hmm.
I feel, because you're doing something that's not easy.
Yeah.
And you are creating your life consciously through discipline, and that produces fulfillment, produces flow.
Yeah.
I don't know if I totally articulated, I kind of made the jump discipline to fulfillment. However, maybe we can fill that in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, discipline, doing hard things is fulfilling because it increases our self-confidence or self-efficacy. It shapes our identity as a person that can do hard things, especially if that hard thing is something meaningful to you. It will feel, you'll feel satisfied with yourself that you are doing a hard thing that is meaningful to you and you're following through, and you'll be like, thank you self, thank you
Totally.
for following through. And so that's fulfilling. I think that's a core aspect of fulfillment, that self-efficacy, that self-confidence, and that I guess, what's the word? The ability to rely on yourself.
Self-reliance?
So, I mean,
Trust?
self-trust. Yeah, the ability to believe in yourself. I think when you believe in yourself, then you're more likely to walk the path of fulfillment. You're more likely to follow your dreams. When people don't believe in themselves, they have a story that, no, I can't do that. No, you know, whatever it may be. It's, I don't know if you want to call it low self-confidence or whatever, confidence or whatever, but when you believe in yourself, then one, you're more likely to walk the path of fulfillment, and two, I think you get more out of life. You squeeze more of the juice out of life because you believe you can. So, yeah.
I do say believing in myself feels a lot better than not believing in myself.
Absolutely.
I was actually trying to remember a thought, and what you said about walking the path reminded me of that thought, which was discipline is fulfilling because we're walking the path. Because the path is discipline. So each time we do that repeated action, we get that sense that we are taking that step towards our fulfilling life. We are fulfilling our promise to ourselves. We are fulfilling our commitments to ourselves. We are fulfilling our self-trust. So each time we do that repetition, we take a step on the path. And again, we always talk about this. We talked about this on our first few episodes, is fulfillment is walking the path.
Yeah.
It's not really about getting anywhere. It's about the walking. And that goes back to what you were talking about, is we can't rely on motivation. We need that action. That action is what is satisfying. And that's all I had to say on that.
Yeah. If you're walking a fulfilled path, it means you are living a particular lifestyle, the lifestyle that is most meaningful to you, the lifestyle that's most resonant with you. And the mechanism of taking each step is discipline. So I think discipline is pretty integral to fulfillment.
Very integral.
Yeah. And at some point, maybe in another episode, we should talk about the idea of determination, because I think that may be a slightly different concept than discipline and motivation. But I think they're very related. I think determination drives discipline. The more determined you are to do something. I guess it's very similar to motivation, but for some reason, it seems like a different concept in my mind. And I would love to explore how to build determination at some point.
Yeah, determination also is another one of those things that feels really good.
Yeah.
Let's definitely tackle that in the next episode. But for this one, I'm curious if you're ready to leave some reflective questions for the audience.
Yeah, let's do it. So, as you go about your day, week, month, year, life, eternity, I hope you'll ponder what I'm about to say. And so, what I hope you ponder is, where in your life can you architect taking some reps with your AMCC? So, just exercising willpower, but not too much. Create a moment where you don't have to execute that much willpower. Maybe it's leaving your phone in your car before you're in a situation where the phone is going to distract you. Or maybe it's, doing anything that is earlier in the process before you need to enact as much willpower. So just think about, where in your life can you use just a little bit of willpower to practice taking some reps with your AMCC and building up more discipline.
Amazing. Yeah. Mine is along a similar vein. What habit do you think you could change that is derailing your path of discipline? And what is a habit you could replace it with that would help you fulfill your discipline?
Amazing. Cool. Well, if you're still here,
you're the GOAT.
You're the GOAT. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this was valuable to you. Leave a comment, share if you found this valuable and you think it could help someone else. But most of all, thank you so much for being here and for listening to us. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Enjoy the rest of your day, month, year, lifetime, eternity.
Yes. Bye.